We all know about vampires. Fanged creatures of the night that feed off the blood of the living. Made most famous by the 1897 work Dracula by Bram Stoker. And Stoker based Dracula off the vampires of European folklore that date all the way back to ancient Greece. But what if I was to tell you that North America has its own long history of vampires, dating back older than the United States, even older than the first white settlers? Today we're going to be taking a look at Cherokee folklore and learning more about the Raven Mockers. And if you like stories of cryptids, ghosts, and supernatural, make sure to hit that subscribe button, and as always, thank you for watching. Our two main sources for this video are going to be the sacred formulas of the Cherokees and myths of the Cherokee, both written by James Mooney in 1891 and 1900 respectively. In the myths and the folklore of the Cherokee peoples, the sick and dying are oftentimes tormented by witches and wizards. But the most feared of these witches and wizards is by far the Raven Mocker. Raven Mockers travel to the home of the sick and dying by taking the form of large, fiery, winged creatures that look like ravens. And as they're flying to the home of the sick and dying, they let out this loud screech that scares away other witches and wizards and lets people in nearby communities know that someone will soon be dead. In all honesty, that's pretty middle and a great way to make a first impression. And Raven Mockers are so powerful and so feared that even other witches and wizards will flee if they even hear them coming. Once the Raven Mocker arrives at the home of the sick and dying, they begin tormenting them. They'll begin taunting them, making noises, beating on the walls, trampling on the roofs, setting on the dying's chest so it makes them hard for them to breathe, and even picking them up and throwing them on the floor, all the while being completely invisible and inaudible to anyone there with the sick and dying. To those around who can't see the Raven Mockers, it just looks like this person is either going through death throes or fighting for air, but really this creature is tormenting and sucking the life out of them. When the tormented becomes too weak to put up a fight, or they finally pass away, the Raven Mocker removes their heart and consumes it. And by consuming the heart, they prolong their own lives. Now again, this only prolongs their lives. It doesn't de-age them in any way, which is why they often take the appearance of old withered corpses. In Tales of the Cherokee, Mooney tells a story about a young hunter that was coming back from a very long trip when he became too tired to continue on. And he decides to spend the night in a longhouse that he thought was abandoned. He lays down in the corner in the shadows, and after a while he hears what sounds like a raven outside. Shortly after that, an old man enters the house. Few minutes go by and he hears another raven, and then a very old woman enters the house. The old man and the old woman start talking to each other, asking each other if they were successful in their hunts. While the old woman says that she was unsuccessful due to there being too many medicine men at the home she went to, the old man pulls out a human heart and tells her to cook it because, unlike her, he was successful in his hunt. Horrified by what he saw, the young hunter just stays in the corner in the shadows pretending to be asleep. The next morning, the old man wakes him up and apologizes for the previous night and gives him a bowl of corn mash for breakfast. The old man explains that he wishes he had more food to give the young hunter, but him and his wife hadn't had any meat to eat in a very long time. When the young hunter goes to leave, the old man says, "Hey, by the way, don't mention anything to anyone that you heard me and my wife talking about last night." As soon as the young hunter got back to a settlement, he told everyone there. He got a group of warriors together, and he came back to this longhouse. But the old man and the old woman were assumed dead. They were kind of just laying on the ground, but they look like old withered corpses, so they might have just been sleeping. So the group of warriors set the house on fire, burning them, and yeah, they were never seen or heard from again. And accounts from this story and other accounts of the Raven Mocker, they share a lot of similarities with European vampires. It's widely believed that vampires can change into animals, most infamously bats, in order to fly around, while the Raven Mocker can change into a large fiery bird and do the same. Both vampires and Raven Mockers can turn invisible. Both have an appearance to an old withered corpse, especially like Strigoi of Romanian folklore. And while vampires consume the blood of their victims, Raven Mockers consume the organs of the individuals that are probably super rich with blood. And it's hard to read about the Raven Mocker without thinking of vampires. And this book was written about 5 years after Bram Stoker's Dracula, so some of this folklore could have been seen through the lens of a post-Dracula world. But this is where the similarities get even weirder. So Dracula was written in 1897. The other book talking about Raven Mockers that Mooney wrote was written in 1891, The Sacred Formula of the Cherokee. And in this book, he writes about how there are certain shaman and medicine men who are trained especially in battling Raven Mockers and other powerful wizards and witches. And one of the tactics they use is they will sharpen up sticks and place around the house. Then if any witches or wizards or Raven Mockers try penetrating this barrier, the sticks will fly straight up into the air, stabbing them wherever they are or however they try to arrive at the house. If they try flying in, they're gonna get a sharp pointy stick to the face. And that most of these witches and wizards are killed within 7 days of being stabbed by these magical flying sticks, which is very similar to how vampires are reportedly killed by running a stake through them. Also, European vampires are weak to fire, and in both cases there are stories of fire being utilized to completely rid the area of both vampires and Raven Mockers. And Mooney wrote about all this 6 years before Dracula was published. But when you go to the reference section of this book, Mooney actually references another book where he got some information about North American vampires. Mooney cites a text called Notes of the Iroquois, in it stating that the Cherokee probably got some of their folklore from much older groups of indigenous peoples who had creatures that their names roughly translate to cannibal ghosts. Creatures that had to eat the flesh and consume the blood of the living in order to survive. Notes of the Iroquois was written by an individual named Henry Schoolcraft in 1847, a whole 50 years before Dracula was written. And I don't know what to do with this knowledge. Apparently vampires, Raven Mockers, ghouls, cannibal ghosts, whatever you want to call them, at one point were just all over the world and affected all cultures. And all these groups of people saw it super important to pass down knowledge of how to deal with these entities, these creatures. And that's really cool. And also horrifying. So what are your thoughts on Raven Mockers? What are your thoughts on some of these vampires, these cannibal ghosts of North America? Let me know down in the comments. What other creatures should I talk about in the future? Let me know down there too. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't. As always, I appreciate all y'all for watching. But until next time, don't forget to stay wild, stay wonderful, and I'll talk to you later.